Good afternoon, guys. It's been a little while since I've been on here. There are a few reasons why, but I won't get into it right now. I wanted to make this audio a while back, and the subject of today's audio is Nolan Wells. And then I changed my mind because I guess there was some part of the inside of me that was pushing back. Because for me, the passing of Nolan Wells hits home. And I've kind of also did it off camera also because when I made a video about my brother years ago on this channel, but I started crying. It's difficult. It's very difficult. The Nolan Wells case is a video that I wanted to do, or an audio, but I was having some kind of internal conflict and pushing back on doing it. Not just until more evidence was gathered, but because I have my own reasons. But it was really when Saturday, July 11th came around, and I woke up for some odd reason because of a dream I had. The dream was about him. And this dream happened before other people were coming out saying what they thought happened to him. And then I knew that I would probably eventually have to make a video of some sort. And what bothers me most is not just the fact that there are not enough answers surrounding his death, but that it appears to be a cover-up. And it reminded me of when my brother died in 1998. My brother's name was Ephraim, or for other people it would be Ephraim. At the time, I had moved out of a home that I was adopted in, and I did not get along with my parents for many reasons that I won't get into. And so they could not locate me. But when they did, they found me and told me when I was 19 years old that my 20-year-old brother, who is my birth brother, who I was very, very close to, and I would say he was the one that really taught me how to love people, even though I really didn't want to, because of all the things that I had been through in my life. They came and told me that he had died. And, you know, when your sibling dies abruptly and they're only 20, it's very hard to cope with something like that. But what made matters worse was, after all the crying and trying to get myself together and pulling the curtains back open, a day later, 2 days later, 3 days later, I was prepared to see my brother. And then I was told he died on December 4th. I was not told until December 14th, not just because they couldn't find me, but because the home that he was staying in had his body cremated without my permission within 7 days. So when I found out on the 14th and I wanted to go see him and be with him and say my goodbyes, his body was gone. And that really did something to my mind. It's kind of like when families send their loved ones off to war and their body doesn't come back, and then they still keep thinking that that person is alive. Things like that happen when you don't have the answers, or you know that the answers are lies. I went into a dark place at that point in my life, and I was 19, and it got darker because when I started investigating what happened to my brother, because I had seen him 1 year earlier. almost to the date. At Christmas time, we got together. The people that were around him at his time of death didn't have any answers. They lied on my brother and said that he was doing drugs because he was living in a home for poor people or people that were drinking too much. They stole money out of his pockets when he was dead. They cremated him without a next of kin approval, even though I was only 1 hour away from him. And then when I went to go talk to whoever I could talk to, I was told to make my peace, get over things, and then the funeral home was the worst. I will never forget that man. When I asked him why he cremated my brother without my permission or anybody in the family's permission, he said he was indigent. I never got the answers that I needed. A year and a half later, I moved to the South, and when I had more resources, I asked for the toxicology report and I asked for the autopsy. And then there was a police officer by then who had disappeared, who wanted to speak to me, but he had disappeared. The person that ran the home that my brother lived in, he disappeared. And the woman who was supposed to be a nurse looking out for people, she disappeared. And when I got the paperwork, it didn't say what they said, that it was probably because he was doing drugs that he died. He had only the pharmacy drugs that they gave him in his system when he died. Because people covered up so much of what happened to my brother, I, after that, and for other reasons, just looked at obstruction of justice and wrongdoing and obfuscation in a way that other people do not look at it. I can kind of sniff it out because it really happened to me. But really, it's the handling of the case so far that lets off the stench that even their district attorney could not wave away. I saw her on TV today, and she was saying that the reason that people should be patient is because they are trying to do a good job. But there is a stench with this case, and I will tell you where it comes from. It comes from the sheriff's quickness to come to aid of all of the young people that were at this party on July 4th before their own official autopsy was released that made it clear that he had a bias. If your own autopsy is not released, then how can you be sure that he drowned? That makes no sense, and it shows bias. And then this stench is further compounded by the fact that the throat and the lungs, which they claim, they being Mississippi, is standard procedure for them to have more time to look at the throat and the lungs before they give it to the second people that would conduct the autopsy. However, if you thought that something was going on with Nolan Wells's throat and his lungs, then the sheriff should have never come out to say that he was found drowned, to only later do more of an examination on the throat and the lungs. Those two actions coming from the same departments conflict, just like Nolan's whereabouts for a period of time, and just like the stories of the kids at the parties. Those conflicts are what reveal a possible cover-up. And not just what is being told, but omissions. What is being left out? Omissions reveal a lot. Just like when the guy at the funeral home in my brother's case said, well, he was indigent, as a justification for how he treated my brother's body. It's this, we can do whatever we want because we know the law. We can use procedure and bend it at our own will. And that's the thing that reeks. I believe the reason that they're taking their time with the throat and lungs and did not continue to give those parts to is because parts like that can lead to possibly putting a time on his death. With a time of death, they can cross reference that with all those kids' phones, the data in those phones, and the data in the boats. So if they just act like he died on a different day, then the data in those kids' phones that they failed to collect will not match the time of death. All this stuff, even though they say it's not a cover up, that's what it feels like. And that's what it felt like in my brother's case when people ran off when it was time to answer questions. I never found out what happened with my brother. People just try to tell me that it was normal that somebody that was 20 just died. I looked at things differently after that, and I still do. The movie The Edge of Darkness came to me. It's an old movie with Mel Gibson. I think he directed it. In the movie, Mel Gibson is a police officer that is investigating his daughter's death. He thought that maybe it was his fault because somebody was getting retribution for cases that he had solved on his own, not because they were actually after his daughter. There's a character in the movie, what's his name? Darius Jedberg, I believe. Jedberg. I don't want to spoil the movie. And don't watch it if you get triggered by violence, because it is violent. There are a lot of people getting shot and there are drownings. And other things. But in the movie, Jedberg is sent to go handle and fix Mel Gibson, because that's what he is. He's a fixer for elite people. Anyway, there's this part of the movie where he sits down with Mel Gibson, and he tells Mel Gibson that Mel Gibson should understand better than anybody in this world that the case of his daughter would not be solved, because Mel Gibson is a police officer and he knows how these things go. And what he says is that there's a lot going on in the world and you can't connect A to B. And Mel Gibson says, well, how do you know? And he says, because I'm usually the guy who stops you from connecting A to B. I thought about that movie after the Nolan Wells updates, because that's what it seems like is going on here. Of course, I hope it isn't.